able to put all our extra spare time and love into making the Continuum, and making the Continuum, and it was great because we could make the Continuum as good as we possibly could. But the reality is that it's expensive to make, and for most people expensive to buy. So consequently, you just don't see that many sales, and it was hard to make any income. So we wanted to make a product that would be more affordable for people, and we also wanted to make a product that we could leverage the years of experience we had in doing a synth engine. So that's where the Mini was born, and we essentially it is the same engine as we have at the Continuum right now. The main differences between the Mini and the Continuum is, of course, it's much smaller and it's cheaper, but it also has a rudimentary display, which is really great for interacting with it without a computer. We've never put a display on the Continuum. That was an early design philosophy of Lippol's I mean, he's a very interesting guy because he's really concerned about his post-life legacy. You know, and so when you look at ancient instruments or older electronic instruments, and I'm thinking of perhaps my Oberheim expander would be one example I used to have, the displays go. And it's the one thing that's will go. So we've made an instrument that was simple that way and made it so that you can interface it with it and hook up for whatever computer that will be in the future. So that's why the beautiful thing about MIDI is it's still around, still a language. And so the sensing technology in the Mini is Hall effect sensors, much like the Continuum, but unlike the hundreds of sensors that are in the Continuums, the Mini has 4 of them, and it has 4 placed in the corners rather than all along both sides of the Continuum. And it generates its pitch information from a ribbon that's underneath this neoprene. There's a movable plate that's on springs, and the 4 sensors give you Z values and Y values, like front to back values. Now, I don't know if you have seen, I did a video recently where, experimenting with trying to improve the playing experience of the ContinuuMini. So it is a tricky thing to play, and most people that have bought Continuum players who have tried the Mini did not like it. They sort of saw it as this as a compromise system, and I think I can understand why there's that feeling, but in the actuality, it is a different instrument. So consequently, it requires different playing techniques, slightly different sound design, and one encouraging thing that we've been able to do is when we initially announced the Mini, we were able to improve its performance so that most of the things that you can do on the from a sound aspect will translate nicely to the Mini and vice versa. And originally I was quite concerned that that wouldn't be the case, and that we were making a specialty type of an instrument, and I'd have to redesign the preset library from scratch basically to make it work really well. So a beautiful thing about the Mini is the price. I think it's fantastic value even just as a synth engine. It's a great ribbon strip. It's extremely accurate in the X direction. The Y is a little tricky to control. There's a lot of musical things you can do with it. There's a lot of musical things you can do with all the Z things too. On this particular one, I put a pressure pad. I don't know if you guys have seen, I did a video, posted it. And what this does is it allows you to press down on the surface and actuate, sort of get an initial Z and Y value, so an initial pressure down and front to back value. So when you start a note by your finger hitting the surface, it's already at a predetermined Z value or Z value. That's actually something you can't do on a Continuum. So there's a benefit there. Now, the Mini is what we call duotactic, so it will sense 2 fingers. And if you're familiar with paraphonic synthesizers, that concept of routing polyphonic information into a monophonic filter is similar in the sense that you get these 2 pitch informations, but they're going to be sharing Y and Z values. So you really have to be aware with that when you play a Mini, because you'll find that if you play it, and then once you hit a second note, it's going to jump in volume, because that second note is starting where the first note currently is. So that is a completely different playing technique than you normally do when you play something polyphonic on the Continuum, and it's also different when you're trying to play monophonic. So Continuum, this is what I think really throws Continuum players off, is that, and it's really hard to, until you experience it, but if you play a monophonic line on a Continuum, you know, what's actually happening is, let's say you go down a minor third or something, it sounds like it's the same note, but in actual fact, you're sounding 2 notes just right at the same time, very, very slightly, and you don't even hear it as polyphonic playing, but it is. And so that technique you have, if you don't want to have that effect of that second note popping in, you have to learn to play differently.
Have you thought about any way to give the user the option to I don't know, put a slowed attack on newly introduced second notes or something?
Yeah, well, we do. So we're just starting to do that. So what we do in the Eagan matrix, we have this parameter that you can program into a sound. So it's a scalar, so you could say number of notes, number of simultaneous notes. So typically what you would do is you would use it as a multiplier. So if it's soft, or as a divider. I think we did division, right? For it? The number of notes, so it automatically was 0.5, I can't remember. I haven't actually programmed one sound for it. So when you hit that second note, it's going to turn the volume, well, whatever that parameter will change to half value. And so if that's
I thought what you actually did was slow the attack. Put an envelope on it, but slow the attack.
That's one way of doing it, but we also have this note scaler.
No, but with the note scaler, there's a lot of things you can do.
There's a lot of things, yeah.
It's up to you to do it.
So, you know, the thing is, you know, Kickstarter, hey, you know, you bought into our experimentation stage. There's only so much you can sort of pre-figure out. It's like the Continuum, how many years? Well, it's been out this for 37 years, so there's an instrument completely in its renaissance. It's so well refined. Here, you know, what we were really concerned with is making this thing robust, just as good as it can possibly be, but at a very particular price point, and it's a tricky thing to try to do. So it was a known thing that we had to do with the engine, but in terms of the playing surface, that was, you know, there was some things that we really had to figure out to do well. And so now, you know, I can honestly say in my studio, I've got a full size and I have a half size, but I love this thing, and I use it because it's very immediate, and it's also right in the sweet spot between my monitors. And so, you know, one thing that I find in
when your cat isn't there.
Yeah.
I put in. I worked on that one, and it was really full of cat hair.
Yeah, it's not mine. I've got Siamese who don't shed. You know, so, in fact, I'll just share a cat story. So I have a shy female. I have the male and the shy female. The shy female, she'll come. She wants to say hi, but the way she gets my attention is she comes up to one side. And invariably, I'm sitting at either at my keyboard front or the Continuum. So when I'm sitting, I have my monitors here, but I have my full size over here, so I can switch around. So I'm there. She comes up to me, always like, and it's always like she's asking a question. And she puts her hand up, one hand up like this, and the other one like this. Well, it's like okay. So it's time for the cuddle session of 10 minutes, and then but she always picks the same spots, like around this C sharp. And I got this picked surface, which eventually,
Oh.
yeah, she keeps asking her questions. So a small price to pay for love. Anyway. So interfacing with the Mini, we've got this nice quality audio output, good for headphones. If you're not familiar with the dim levels, please read the manual on the back or online, or download it online, and get the right levels for your headphones, the efficiency of your headphones. The power requirements, what does it actually take in terms of the milliamps?
It's around 200.
Yeah, so it should run on a lot of different things. I've powered on all sorts of stuff, and it's quite good. And then we have pedal input. Well, we call it pedal EXT, so it's external. And currently, you can plug in a pedal with an adapter, like these Yamaha pedals that we have up there, and they will appear as pedal 1 over here. So like on the Continuum, we have 2 pedal inputs. So this first pedal, so any sound that's programmed, you'll get pedal 1, and that's mappable depending on the preset that you have. We currently support an interface, so you can plug in an adapter, and you can hook this up if you're into modular stuff and you want to get control voltages out of this. And there's 2 solutions for that. We have the legacy CBC that we've done, so there's a cable that goes through that, and also we have Evaton Technologies micro CBC, which is Eurorack. And when you buy the micro CBC, it comes with the appropriate cable to connect to that interface.
Can I just interject for 1 second? If anybody who already has like the Continuum, there's 2 different cables, one that goes to the Continuum and one that's for the Mini, because there's 2 different plugs. I did bring a couple extra Mini cables if anyone happens to already have that, but see me.
That's great. And it works really well. So fortunately, I got a micro CVC from Russ, and then in the intention of getting something ready for the NAMM show, to have like a Eurorack setting with the CVC. But then one of the people that works with us, he brought his Eurorack system, and he begged me for the micro CVC, so I gave it to him, and he saved me from going down that Eurorack hell, because I haven't bought it. I didn't buy a module yet, and I just know, okay, so I'm going to put a module with a power supply and a micro CVC and nothing else. No, it's always going to get filled by some gorgeous thing from Make Noise or somebody.
Just a half an hour later, you can make it.
No, yes, yeah. Well, you got
Euro correct.
Yeah. And of course, because the octave spacing on the MIDI was less than we get on half size or of course a full size, we pre-built in octave switches.
Not octave spacing, but yeah.
Yeah, not octave spacing, but yeah, I mean the total size of the number of keys that we have. So that makes it easy to switch back and forth octave-wise. And we also have the ability, although we haven't made the cables and completely debugged it, that you can send control voltages into the Mini, and so we'll have a special cable that'll be available from Haken Audio that plugs in there, and then you'll have control voltages which will then be mapped to whatever you have in the 2 different pedal inputs.
Oh.
So, and that, when we had a chance, that was working well. But we've, because of the software, we've been down a number of different roads. So I find the Mini really fun to play. I know these sounds. You just experiment with these presets. You're going to find, as long as you're careful when you approach them, you just can't bang on every single preset. You're going to find some explode. And actually, it's kind of encouraging to, explode, what I mean is they're requiring a different dynamic space. So when you go at them, just don't think you're just going to keep banging and banging and banging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting because one of my favorite soft synths is Omnisphere. And just from the capabilities of that company and the quality of the people that work there, and Diego and particularly Eric. And but their library is full of volume changes. So it really depends on what genre you're going into. So be careful when you go from soundscape to EDM, because it's you take your head off. Okay, so I'm going to.
Hey,
Any
Ed.
questions so far?
I just had a thing. The Mini was set to DIM 0. So if that's
That's good. That's
okay,
perfect.
okay.
Yeah. Right. Thanks. Any questions, people? Like, how many people have minis here?
There, you have a little button on there that's a tooth, like a tooth, right?
This one, yeah.
What kind of sensor is it using?
It's using a very sophisticated piece of foam with a 8mm cartridge L-shaped thing. It's completely mechanical. So all it's doing is it's pressing down on the surface.
The very edge
Yeah.
outside the room.
It's just,
Wait, let me see.
it's just a way to separate the right and left hand, so with the left hand you can.
Oh,
Right hand.
Okay.
So it's just a different, like,
Yeah.
when you think about it, if you're playing, if this was the entire playthrough.
Yeah, I
right?
thought you would like
And if
drill
I'm
the hole in
pressing
there.
down on it,
Okay.
I can control it to a certain amount, but now I'm having something that's saying, I press it here, now I can sort of influence Z by using my two hands, or I can rock Y in a particular direction.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's cheap,
Yeah.
it's really easy to
Give you a
build,
little extra.
completely non-intrusive, doesn't hurt it.
So you're basically taking a trick that people came up with. Oh, look, you can cheat this thing by going in here and doing this, and just making a way to
Yeah.
access that.
And in fact, I after he had done that, I figured out, well, really, I don't want to add cost to it, because we worked hard to.
Yeah.
So, but I figured out, well, with one more screw and extra hole in the top, was really
Yeah.
trivial. So the one I showed yesterday, and the one he meant to bring, he got the wrong one, grabbed the
Yeah.
wrong one today, has a screw on it that does the same thing. But for those of you in the Kickstarter, you gotta find the DIY video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways to make it.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah,
it's
so we
not-
have now one where we've built that in to the, but frankly, someone said today, because they had tried it, I think Jesse built. He
It
built
did
one
look
of
like
these,
that.
and he actually prefers this than to the solution that we've done.
Okay.
So it's not, I think that has a lot to do with, because I've done both of them, and I like them both for different reasons. But that's also about familiarity.
Mhm.
So it's just not necessarily that if something looks fancier, more refined, this is what we're selling now. Well,
Yeah.
it's what you play,
Yeah.
it's what you
But
know.
The other thing is you can always leave out the screw, and,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter.
So, but it reminded me of one of the concepts we had for the playing surface was exactly that. So this would have been the cutout, rather than having a straight rectangular, we had thought, well, maybe it'd be interesting to be able to touch, because the plate is bigger than the contact surface. So you can actuate the plate without it knowing that there's a finger down.
Yeah.
So we had kind of thought about that, but then, for whatever reason, we decided.
Is the plate capacitive or pressure? Like FSR or capacitive?
What type of?
It's just a resistor, a straight ribbon in the X direction, and the other direction is Paul effect sensors, so it's magnetic.
I was just wondering if it knows my finger is there by the fact that it's a wet finger, or if it's.
No, completely.
No,
Yeah.
it's just resistive, so it's more like a slider. The only thing I did is I calibrate it so that it's linear.
Excuse me, Ed, I kind of missed this.
Yeah.
What's the range without the octave keys used?
What is this? So it's just
Two
over
octaves.
2 octaves, and then up 2 octaves, 1, 2, plus 1, plus 2, and minus 1 and minus 2. You get a little indicator to say you're off
Yeah.
the center, but it's
Right.
really easy. And then whenever you load in a new preset, it's going to center itself.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
So, why did you make the particular choice of USB? You know, USB-C just came out, and
Oh, I hate
Um,
USB. I'll answer that.
Okay, here comes USB diatribe.
The DIN 5 MIDI connectors are too big. I couldn't fit them in the box, and they cost more than a USB connector. I was really trying to keep costs down. But USB is just endless problems because of terrible ground noise problems and all these other things. In fact, when you receive one of these, I just ship with it a ground loop noise isolator, and you only use it if you hear noise, because if you use it when you don't hear noise, you may introduce it because you don't have a ground path to whatever's making your sound. But if you do hear noise, it'll get rid of it. In any case, I think it's the same reason why Apple is so hot on getting rid of wired headphone connectors, because if people take your iPhone, hook it up to your home stereo, it sounds terrible because of USB noise if you have USB plugged in. And you figure out, well, it's just a phone. Well, actually, their audio output is very, very good. Well, if you do the same thing through Bluetooth, guess what? It sounds great because there's no ground connection. And I think they're really trying hard to get away from the stigma of that's caused by the Bluetooth, by USB ground loop.
It's just horrible latency with Bluetooth.
Yes, that's.
Yeah, there is that, and if you're playing an instrument, yeah, it might not be the thing of choice. But if you're just playing through your stereo, it's okay.
Did you think about TRS?
It was out there, and I think I could still do it. I'm very tempted, but it's just we promised this other thing you was talking about the control voltage thing.
Yeah, so we could
programmed in
repurpose
there,
that.
and you made a cable, and then you forgot the cable.
Yeah, I
and
didn't
then,
mean
we
to
never
distract you from.
Yes, no. And I would really like to do that because if nothing else, like a Beat Step or something has this cute little connector.
Yeah.
And the thing is, now I'm going to eat my words. I didn't really implement MIDI, so I could do a TRS MIDI, but I don't have any isolation.
All right.
So basically, I was kind of screwed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the beauty of that, of course, is that you can keep this autonomous from a computer if you want to interface with other gear.
Yeah.
And so it is now when you go through USB, you need some sort of host in order to set things up. But they're right.
So on the Continuum too, like right now I have the big XLR connectors
Yeah.
for AIA because that's again ground isolated.
Yeah.
People really want SPDIF because realistically most people, but it has the same problem. It's not ground isolated. So I don't know if you saw the triple DSP board yesterday, but it's got SPDIF and USB, and we'll just have to deal with it. Hopefully, the fact that the 3-prong cable is such a better ground than USB is.
Right.
I mean, USB is this odd thing, right? They get incredible amount of performance out of the very, very dirt cheapest thing they can possibly make. And it's just not ideal for audio. But yes, I admit.
And because it gets used for everything,
It,
it
yeah,
gets polluted.
and it's more, it is definitely more.
Yeah.
I understand.
All right.
Was that a good diatribe?
That was good, yeah.
It qualified as a diatribe.
So, if you're curious, we currently have Dave over here, has his Linstrument beautifully connected to the Mini, so you can sort of hear how it works with that. The nice thing about connecting external devices to this is it's been designed to work in conjunction. So like earlier today we had Keith Andy did a demonstration showing an interface that he had done, and always with the intention of supplementing what he could do with this instrument with another sort of input device. So when he wants to use his new this button plunger design that he has, he's going to be able to play discrete, very solid pitches, but have all the flexibility of pitch changes with the Mini, which is very cool. And I did a lot of
Yeah, or even other things, like if you want to do a CS80-like thing and just use a ribbon on there, you can program Eagan matrix sound to do that, right? You don't have to make it a pitch source.
I think we still had implemented that no note velocity information.
All that stuff is there. I haven't used it much yet, but there's a lot of possibilities.
Originally, Eddie Jobson, when he got a Continuum, what he really missed on his CS80, he missed the CS80 aspect, a performance aspect, which is very interesting because I really see that CS80 as amazing, an okay synthesizer and an amazing performance. It's a synergistic thing. So we had to actually put that in. That was a decade ago or something. But I've experimented with hooking up external. I've done this with the XKey 37, which I like for what it is quite a bit. Interesting keyboards, polyphonic aftertouch, and it's scissor keys too. So it's really actually easy to do glisses and very compact. The resolution of the aftertouch leaves something to be desired. So in my experimentations with it, we decided to create this mode where we can specify some part of that structure in there to say, well, where's the MIDI coming from? And so if the MIDI's coming from here, I want you to do this set of parameter things. But if it's coming from over here, do this other things. So for instance, I could do things like not compromise the speed of the interaction with the continuum surface, but when it came from the XKey, I knew I had compromised, I had Y in a particular position and compromised Z values, so I just put in some interpolation. So we really designed that so that you can sort of get the maximum of whatever you want to hook up to, either the Continuum or the ContinuuMini. And that's part of our design philosophy. It's why we did Synth Engine in the first place, was because people bought a Continuum, and this is back when it was just basically, you could hook it up to Kima, which is a beautiful and complicated thing. And there weren't, this is well before sort of MP was generally starting to be, in the zeitgeist and accepted. So people would, they'd see the Continuum, they like this idea, but they would, but it's hard to play. It's like, it's an instrument that you have to learn. So they would go through this, then they'd be getting dumped in their same place. They'd get this Kima system, which is wonderful and big, but it's hard to program. Like, it's just really, it just takes years and years. So we just sort of got tired of dealing with that. We said, well, it would be kind of cool if we built this engine into the Continuum. And so started down the path of putting a shark in there, and originally it was just going to be a sine generator so you could practice in the hotel room, but it grew into this engine. It grew from prototyping things in Kima, working with them, and then being unsatisfied with the back and forth of like doing something in Kima and then building it into the shark. Different, like one's fixed, the other's floating points, so all sorts of different things that we have to experiment with. The feedback loop of that building process was just too slow, so consequently we started to build modules in, and now we have the Eagan matrix. That's where that whole thing came from. So, but it was specifically designed to work with the Continuum. And it was this, we've made that engine, we've made this playing surface, and it should be able to work well with the Eagan matrix. And because it's new, over time we will start to develop slight variations of patches that you would build for this thing that will be different or not existing on the Continuum and vice versa. So one big thing that you do not get with the ContinuuMini is pressure weighted portamento. So there's no way on this surface to know how hard you're pressing. If you were to think of this as a giant seesaw, where are you rocking in this seesaw? And on the Continuum, we can take advantage of that information, and that's why we can do all these slides and different things. So consequently, there's a whole category of presets that we have for the Continuum that use a specialized area for auxiliary control called a touche area, which I was going to do a talk on, and I may get to, but it depends on time. It gets a little deep. So that won't be appearing in the ContinuuMini, and also, of course, time will march forward. So currently, the ContinuuMini and the Continuum have exactly the same sound engine. This is not an expandable product, and we don't really have any plans. We've talked about doing things, but there's only so much time, and now we've gotten back into this exciting kinetic modeling that Christoph has been working on, and I just want to start designing sounds again. That's what got me into it. So who knows what we will do in terms of development. But one of the plans for the Continuum is we first came out with expanded DSP. So this box that I have over here has exactly the same DSP PCB, exactly the same as you get in the Continuum ×2. And they're all connected. We use the AES3 stream to do data interchange, so it acts as a big synth engine. And so currently, the expander is available. It's also possible to, depending on the vintage of your Continuum, to send your Continuum back in and get an internalized expanded DSP engine. Our plans for the future for Continuums, besides some slight changes in terms of case design, things like that, is we have a triple DSP board that will sort of become the de facto standard for that. Now, and the implementation of that triple DSP board will be, as it is now, it's primarily a polyphony enhancer. So instead of getting 8 voices, you get 24 voices, something. So we have no plans to expand the MIDI in that way, and eventually we will expand that. Christoph's already done sound design where you don't think of these 3 DSP as just a single thing, but they're chained. So you have 2 DSP creating this polyphonic engine, which is then fed into the single DSP that does chorusing or flanging or reverbs or that sort of thing. So any questions? Yeah, Russ?
It's a real basic user interface question, and I've tried to find this, so I'll just ask it. I noticed at one point I had accidentally gotten the Mini into a mode where I could very rapidly go like 1 bank at a time, and I thought I held 2 buttons down to do that.
Yeah, it's the first time you press the octave buttons together.
So you go into menu system, and on the back there's sort of a cheat sheet for the menu system. But one of the things the menu system is to go through the banks.
Okay, because if you hit the 2 at the time, then it goes into the menu.
Right, and one of the things in the menu system is go through the banks.
Oh, so I had to get to that entry.
Yeah, and so most people don't bother because they just use the accelerating thing and
Okay.
Yeah.
go too far and then back up a little bit.
I see.
So, but
Okay, that was part I didn't get.
Sure, Rocky?
So the expander can only be used as an expander, not as a standalone, correct?
that is correct.
That's correct.
No, it's very tight.
Yeah, it's actually, see what the expander does is the first thing it does, you turn it on and it goes, where are my sensor boards? And if it doesn't see them, it just says, well,
Then it wants
I'm in
its
lost
mommy.
world here.
Okay.
Yeah. There is a way that we can, if you press and hold a button, you can, we use that if you want to program the expander. For whatever reason you needed to get at the DSP. But yeah,
But
it's-
actually, I don't make those anymore.
Yeah.
They're not available anymore.
Oh, so the expander will
No,
not be
no.
available?
No, it already isn't available.
The external?
Yeah, the external one, and because everybody wanted internal, nobody wants to hook up extra cables except for.
Including me.
Yeah, and you want the direct connection.
I was, when Lippold had the time, I said, well, can you take those 2 DSP and put them
I could
inside?
if you want.
Oh, yeah, I do, actually.
Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow.
Well, there is one advantage of having the expander. So AS3, it's differential, so it can run for, I don't know, hundreds of feet, I guess. So one thing that we do with the CBC is we use the 2 unused pins on a MIDI out connector on the CBC, on this Continuum, and run I²C signal to the CBC. Well, it's, there's a limitation of how long you can do that. So if you have a rack-mounted CBC, you have to make sure that your Continuum is relatively close with a MIDI cable. That's kind of inconvenient. So if you have an expander, you have the interconnect with the AES3, and then that's in a rack, and your CBC is also in a rack someplace next to your modular, and then you actually connect to the expander to the CBC. So that's one thing that'll be, I don't know why I told you about it, because you can't have it. So.
But the other thing is, even that, I asked around, and you're in a unique situation. Almost everybody has their modular right next to.
Yeah,
the
right up
radio,
there. So
and so it's not an issue.
because they're both hands-on instruments. Yeah. So any more questions? I'm going to start diving into The Eagan matrix?
I have one.
Sure.
So sorry, my apologies to everyone in the room. I'm a complete total newbie to digital music. I've done acoustic music a long time, but I'm a complete total newbie to digital music. So would you mind telling me how you're set up for the video that you did at about 4 minutes into the video where you do the bell chime thing with the XKey and the Mini?
Yeah, so what you would do is you would, there's nothing special you really have to do to the XKey except, do you have an XKey?
No, I'm thinking about getting
Okay,
one.
so
After watching your video, I was looking for one.
I think I can send you the parameters. I think I can send you the setup preset. So, well, then make sure that you bug me about it again. If you do get an XKey, say, hey, Ed, you would optimize the parameters. I optimized everything that I found with the XKey, so it worked well.
Yeah,
but
but
all you
I wanted you to go a step back and just tell me how everything is set up.
You would take the XKey USB. So you would have, let's say, you're using a computer to hook them up.
Yeah.
So you would connect the. You can do it through any sort of MIDI router that you might have on your computer. You can do it through the editor. So you have both your devices connected through USB to your computer, and then in the editor, you go to this page and you see where it says external one music data. This is like a little MIDI router that we built into the editor. So this allows the editor to act as a gateway for getting MIDI to and from. So right now the MIDI global settings is showing me my serial number 256 ContinuuMini is connected, and then we're sending out little CC messages all the time, just saying, hey, I'm still here. So that's why you see the blue lights, just so it knows what mode it's in. Then in this MIDI and global settings, we have a dedicated connection to Kima, because Kima was actually, when we had worked with that, it was actually really nice. It didn't have bi-directional communication, so it was really easy to use it with the Continuum, because if you designed a sound in Kima and it was 5-voice polyphony, this controller automatically knew about it. And it also knew about zones, and so that made setup. So that's a legacy thing we've had forever. We also have a dedicated mode for the Kenton. It shows it's unconnected there. So if you have like an audio MIDI setup that recognizes a Kenton, it will connect it up. And if you have particular firmware, we have a mode where it's just completely transparent, and you can have independent Kenton Kilimix controls for every single preset. So it's actually quite nice, quite flexible. There was an early controller that we supported. We also have people that we've used the beat step. We've done things so this is connected. So for your XKey, what you would do is you would go to external one music data, and you would just find your device there, and then just select it from the pop down, and then you're done. So your XKey is going to send its information out on channel 1, and this is MPE is this multi-channel, sort of every note is on a different channel fundamentally. So what the XKey, what the Continuum notices is that this is all coming in on channel 1's polyphonic aftertouch. So you get every note that you're playing on a different MIDI channel. You can play at the same time with your MIDI. And because it's polyphonic aftertouch, you get independent Z values for every single note that you play.
Yeah, that's the thing about MPE. They specifically define that stuff coming in on channel 1 is like standard MIDI.
Yeah, which is great. So we interpret it that way, and it works out great. So you can decide, you can play things on the MIDI, go play other things on the XKey at the same time, and you're only really limited by your polyphony, which is typically 8-voice.
And what was your sound source for that video?
It's all ContinuuMini. So the performance data comes out of your XKey,
right?
And then it gets combined into the computer, and it gets sent out to the MIDI, and then it's also combined with your MIDI performance,
right?
And that's all controlling the DSP sound engine in here, which then is your audio output. So
What was your audio output?
just out of this
Are you asking
headphone output.
what was the
That's
preset?
what preset.
Which preset?
Oh, jeez, I can't remember, sorry.
No, I'm asking, what was your audio output plugged into for me to hear it on the video?
Oh, you see, the headphone output is multi-purpose. It's not just headphones,
Right.
it's a line level output. So I just plugged it in and recorded it in my DAW.
Okay,
Yeah, that's it, straightforward.
thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? How am I doing for time? So we have Gert at 3:15.
Yeah.
And John, are you gonna go or do you wanna?
No, I'll talk to people afterwards.
You talk to
that
people
wants
afterwards,
feedback.
okay.
Well, then you have till 3:15.
Yeah.
I have till 3:15.
Well,
That's
we're-
good.
But you also don't have to do that, I mean.
No,
No, you
it's,
don't.
it's good, I can talk, like, just, if you guys,
We like it when you do.
okay, so, this is the, so now we're going to Eagan Matrix 101. This is the interface for the Eagan Matrix. I'm currently working out, similar to what Randy had done, if you saw his earlier thing, I'm working on sort of a performance view. So one thing about the Eagan Matrix that people have said, it's like, I don't know programming, sorry Randy, but yours is absolutely awesome too. So here, this is a performance view. It makes it easier. I recently got into some Microsoft Surfaces just because I like using Macs and I wanted to have a touch surface, so I didn't want to get an iPad. But I wanted a way to do performance. So there's a way that you can interact. This will be in version 9, more than likely. You can interact with the library, but I won't go into too much depth. Just suffice it to say it's a simpler way of having to always look at all this other information. Because if all you're really concerned about is selecting a preset and then twiddling a few knobs and then maybe storing them into your user presets, well then, that's what that interface was designed.
I like that.
It looked cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Completely designed because of the screen resolution on my Surface Scope. So it's not showing up over here because this is very small. So we get the same Surface display that we have on the other one. We also have access to all the user presets we can store into them. Just a few little librarian type things that more experienced players would know about, that when you store into a preset, it'll automatically append a number so that you don't have to worry about duplicating things. And then the sort of basic controls that are available in the other view of the editor right there, and also the main other controls that we have. And the library is really available, so it's really made for a touch surface. And then you just get an easy view to see all the things. But I can show that to you later, Randy. Check it out.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work well.
I'm just going to go into the.
That's a nice mouse pad you have there.
It's
a nice mouse pad.
World's most expensive.
It's got sound effects.
World's most expensive mouse pad.
It's made for a screen. If I really want to travel laterally, my screen has to be 3 inches high. So let's go through this interface. Starting at the top, in the center, we have 16 user presets. These are things that you can modify and then store them into these performance areas. That makes them really quick and easy. They're the first 16 things that are available on a Mini. When you get your Mini, it's already pre-populated with a bunch that you can not worry about overriding because they're just duplicates of things that are already in the library. You can, it's a whole library, and so you can save and load presets from your disk. We also have, in this view, we have the presets available over on the left-hand side, so we have the categories, and then within a category we have all sorts of different presets. The ContinuuMini is it's actually a different instrument. It's not like, one of the questions, well, how many presets does it have? So you say, well, it's got like just over 300. And in fact, you know, and that's one of the things we say, you know, we sort of saying, well, you know, it's like Omnisphere, legitimately so, you know, it's like has over 10,000 presets. And it's just the nature of the beast. This was really designed by, you know, most of the presets are done by me, and recently other people like Christoph and Richard Cram have been doing design, but each one of them is really like a world to explore. So they're not really meant to be this thing you know, you audition. It's actually interesting when people approach at a trade show for the first time, the first thing they really start doing is changing the presets. and you know, it's just a natural thing to do because you're just used to doing that with any sort of synth. And these ones are made to be individually consumed, individually played with different playing styles too. So, you know, you just can't approach them all the same sort of way. So that's our library. We have this surface display. So that's telling me I'm on channel 9 with this particular voice. Hit 2 of them and you can see. And so there are circles. Well, there's where the circle is centered is your pitch. The line in the middle is your deviation from standard equal temperament, or the standard grid. Equal temperament.
Equal temperament.
Equal temperament. Not the grid, 2 different things. And then the size of the circle is, you know, your Z value. Typically how loud and a little bit how bright. And the triangles show you where I'm rocking back and forth in the Y direction. Then below that we have, well, over here there's a MIDI router that you typically will not need to use if you're just using the MIDI in a simple way. Even if you hook up the XKey to it, you don't need to monkey with it. And this is showing me the over there with the DSP and the MIDI out, it's showing me the polyphony of this particular preset. Then from left to right, we have the ability to turn this surface display on or off. That'll be remembered in your MIDI. So if you do change it so it defaults on, I think it ships default off, but you can turn it on. We've left it off just, you know, for a concern about, you know, unnecessary MIDI information coming back. Calibrate is something that you do on a continuum and is done in the factory at Haken World headquarters in Lipwold's basement, and with your MIDI, and you don't need to do it unless specifically told that you need to do it. Then we have over here the control voltage converter had some presets, and you can actually custom design presets within the Eagan matrix. But if you want simple setups to use with the ContinuuMini or the Continuum, you would do them here with either the CBC or the micro CBC. And then we can get into different things about the way the pitch is normal or reversed. The note priority, typically on a synthesizer that's polyphonic and you have notes sustaining, you want to leave it on oldest because that's the least amount of voice robbing. But there's some reasons, particular reasons why you might want to change that. And then there's some MIDI parameters. Its default MIDI setting for the Y and the Z is to the MP plus thing that we support. Note processing. This is in the MIDI. What we do is it defaults to a setting of sending out a velocity of 127, and all the information comes from our Z stream that comes out of it. You can change that if you want, and you can get a derived note value depending on that sample hole value you get from the surface interaction. And then all across here are all these different controls that are mappable to the 2 pedal settings that we have. So typically on a sound that you might load, you know, like this one here, you see we have a gain setting. This means nothing on the MIDI. This is the digital input on a continuum. We call this a recirculator. It's an effects unit. It has some reverb and some echo type things. And then we have 6 sort of general purpose controls that, depending on the sound, this will be kind of like this as Roger said, this meta level where you've programmed things in and then you've put hooks into them. So we can see this formula arrow over here. And the hooks then are all scaled in very particular ways. So you can use one control to do something globally. Like for instance, there's a barrel there that makes the sound generally brighter or duller. And depending on the sound, it may use all 6 of these possible barrels, or it may use none. By the way, everything in the library you can modify in a simple way just by changing the barrels and saving them to this, or you can go into this structure and start getting into modifying the way this thing is really put together in rather fundamental ways, and then save that variation to disk. We have support for a sustain pedal, or Sostenuto. Sostenuto is like sustain if you don't know it. It just means that it'll hold, once you activate the pedal, it will hold whatever's down, and then anything new will not be sustained. But you can do that on 2 different levels. This is an octave switch, so that you could use a pedal to do an octave performance. This is more important on like a half size, so that you could dedicate a pedal and say, okay, I know when I press it, I'm going to go down 2 octaves all the time. Less so for the Mini, because you do have the built-in octave switches. This mono switch, I'm not going to go into too much depth, but it's basically based on information from the pressure-weighted thing, the way we're going to interact with it. So you can have a sound on a continuum where you rock back and forth and the pitch goes all the way, or you can have it as a switch. You can also have it act, which is a very nice performance thing, where you can pick a particular range here. So you could have a mono interval so that if you played anything, let's say within a major third, it would treat it as 1 finger. So you get that pressure weighted effect. But if you played something removed from it, let's say the octave pad, they'll be discrete things. So that's, I've done some sounds where I've designed it, and really what you want to do is, instead of playing something melismatic and sliding back and forth, you're actually going to move another finger down, and if it's more than like a semitone, without that switch on, it'll hear it as 2 different notes. You don't necessarily want that. So it's nice to be able to program that.
Does that work on the Mini?
No.
Okay, yeah.
It's all based on pressure weighted information.
Gotcha.
Okay, so round rate. So this is a rounding that is scalar. It's a 7-bit value from 0 to 127. So 0 means there's absolutely no rounding. And then 127 means it's quantized completely. It'll act like an organ if you slide up and down. And then anything in between there, it just, what you'll do is you'll play a note and see how it's rounding? I'm not moving it up to pitch. So that's a round rate of 100. You can set it to like a round rate of 1, and it will take about 3 minutes to make the rounding. And Lipple was fearing, because he thought I had fallen into the world of beat frequencies, and I am a beat frequency nut. I love it. I just, one of my favorite pieces is this piece that Lamont Young wrote that is all it is fist, held for a very long time. It's gorgeous. Or it'll drive you fucking nuts. Depending on your point of view, or both at the same time.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When it does the rounding, is it going in a linear motion to that pitch, or is there? Okay.
Well, not exactly.
Not exactly. Okay, so down this so we had this pitch resolution. Now we have 21-bit pitch resolution, because what happens is as 2 things drift towards each other, you hear them as 2 pitches, and then you hear them as 1 pitch with a beat frequency. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the resolution right at the very end, it'll just all of a sudden lock. Mm-hmm. And so we went to a 21-bit value I mean, I guess that was the only reason. I mean, it's gorgeous. Try it sometime. It's captivating.
Load adjust tuning table and then play a triad, a major triad, and over 3 minutes listen to the beats melt away. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's good.
But I was really worried that I had lost Ed.
You never had. So here we have these different rounding modes, and this, these are kind of like what a lot of Continuum players report to me is that they try to practice without rounding. Then during the gig, hey, it's like it's too risky. The bad thing about rounding is that you will never develop your finger memory if you use it. It's just impossible. You have to start. It's like Randy playing on a quantized theremin all the time. He would just, it's so low level. But it might be a good thing. You would never need to ground yourself or worry about that stuff. So we have different rounding modes. We have rounding dependent on the bottom two are depending on where you are in the Y position. So that's a really easy way to, let's say, have rounding as you play up on the upper part of the, your fingers are up here. And then this is not so much on the well, it can apply to the MIDI if you do sustain. And if you play on the other side, it will be unrounded. Some sounds have been programmed that way.
Point with your thing again. She's trying to get a picture.
Okay.
That's
my thing. Yeah. So that's so if I chose that, if I chose the bottom one, this would be unrounded, and then up here would be completely rounded, and it would gradually change between the two.
So Christophe was had requested that, actually developed it first as part of the patch. Built it in eventually because so if you get scared at some point, you can move up to higher Y.
Have you thought about octave rounding?
Well, what you can do is there's a tuning grid. So you can decide, and actually Pablo is working on this beautiful editor, and we have 8 custom tuning tables that are in there, and it's just not tuning, it's essentially a grid and where it is. So you can specify how big your grid is and then how offset it is.
Yeah, I think he's actually talking about where it's kind of like an automatic version of the triangle, where basically, if you enable it, then it looks at your thing, kind of like what I'm doing here a little bit, and
it just jumps the next octave.
It jumps the next octave.
Yeah. There's actually a couple of presets in there. If you look at the cymbalum, they are divided. So depending on where you are and why, it will be octave shifted. So
this is yet a different.
This is like an automated octave pedal that recognizes that I've just gone up, and it's like the next note you play is if it's below it, but within a certain octave, then it says, okay, I'm going to actually go up an octave automatically for you.
It's Jordan Rudess's GeoShred.
Like GeoShred.
Trick.
The answer is
Other
no.
people have done it. That would be a fun thing to have, going back to the
I did it in software, but it just...
Yeah, actually, that's right, Jesse demonstrated that.
It has some MIDI bandwidth issues.
Yeah, so what you had done is you had disconnected the local on, so he disconnected the Synth Engine,
right,
and then played the MIDI out, MIDI processed it, and then spit it back into the engine.
Mm-hmm. And you could, on my thing, it'd be no problem. And I was trying to
Excuse me, Ed, can you save a little time to play some of your favorite presets? I'd be interested in hearing them.
Yeah, I'll do them on the Continuum then. I'll ship.
I mean, on the Mini.
Was there something you were going to demonstrate with 2 minis? Or you with that?
I wasn't really going to do that. Yeah. Well, I can play some different presets that I have on the MIDI if you want. Let's see, what do I got? You're 315?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Okay,
can take
so
some of my time.
yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, and then down here, this is where you can select those particular. I had talked about divisions of tuning grids, and so we have some just sort of preset ones. These end division ones are cute. A bunch of just ones, and then on the bottom are the custom grids where you can put things in, and that can get pretty interesting. I think Rob Schwimmer uses one of them to basically make a 1 octave take 2 octaves of space, so that now we can play some quarter tone music specific.
What does CNT mean?
Where do you see that?
CNT.
In the formula area.
Yeah, and CNT times.
Oh,
100.
continuous.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so,
Duh.
well, not that obvious, right? So here you see.
I got you.
Yeah, so these are our different modes.
Oh, I thought you said
Read it where you initially touch. Continuous, normally where you are initially. A derivative, how far you are, it's velocity. And then relative to initial. All these good things. And then over here are the pedal assignments. So you have these two pedal inputs or those two CV inputs through there. And so if I wanted this, my first pedal to control what was in barrel one, then I would just map it that way. And now I could control this from my foot pedal. And that's saved for every single preset. It's all different.
What does the word barrel mean? Where does that come from?
It is, I don't know, like people have wondered about that, and I thought it was a commonality, but I guess it isn't. I had this idea for a control, actually I thought about building hardware too, which was essentially a roller. So that you would get values and you would, as you rolled your finger over it, it's just a potentiometer and then it would express itself that way. And I always kind of liked that kind of interface because you could move it fine with the end of your finger, or you could just move your hand and really get fast gestures. So at one point I thought about, it'd be cool on the Continuum, or maybe as an adjunct to the Mini, as you had those things as a performance control, and you could just really move them quickly. So that's
the purpose of those ones up there, is to be able to tweak it quickly while you're performing or close to it.
Yeah, or it's like the designer's choice of, hey, these are things you might want to adjust.
Okay.
It's like, I really don't need echo because I'm always running it from an H9 or something.
Hey, look at me, I'm an important control point.
You can have a MIDI assigned to it. So you can have an external controller just back with MIDI CC.
Oh, gotcha, okay. And you couldn't do that with other things.
So it serves the purpose of a wheel?
Hmm?
It serves the purpose of a wheel? Because it rolls back
As a
and forth?
or as a modulation.
Yeah, or if you had just like the four general sliders on keyboards.
Yeah.
Yeah, like an endless mod wheel.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. I think that when you were looking at the pedal drop down menu, you said there's something called fine tune.
Fine tune is a global parameter over here. So if you're playing with your 432 frames, your 420.
I know some of those people.
Yeah. So yeah, you can tune the entire.
Although because the Continuum has a linear layout, I've heard people that say, the singer kept getting more and more flat. That's not too bad. You just stop looking at the, just move over a little bit. And just keep playing.
You can play without looking at the keyboard.
I noticed that your Continuum is called Continuum 5256. Is that what you just happen to name it, or is each unit?
They all come. That's serialized.
He happens to got that.
Oh, okay. But so there's no hardware serial inside.
Yes,
that is in the firmware.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
So you actually have a hardware serial number in each one.
Yeah. That way you can hook up several of them, or you can hook up with Continuums. And you can hook up several Continuums. And people do all sorts of wacky stuff.
Or if it gets stolen.
It's just a way to keep track of which is which.
Yes.
How do you do it? Firmware or?
I have to calibrate each one anyway, so I just stick it.
He just, there's a pick routine to do that. So, and then below that is this matrix. So there's a bunch of sources on this one side and a bunch of destinations on the top. But rather than talking too much about this, because this gets into this, I'll just say one thing briefly. I grew up, when I went to university, they had EMS synthesizers, so this is what I knew. I love matrix synthesizers. We had a VCS3 and a Synthy 100, and it just seemed like a natural thing to me, and so then I applied it when I decided to design this and trying to keep everything within a single, as much as I could, into a single interface window, and it seemed very logical, and people have had a lot of problems with it. To me, it's absolutely logical. So it's simple. You've got sources, and they match at a particular point and go up to a destination. And then, so on a Synthy, what you do is, if you wanted to connect the output of the oscillator into the master section here, you'd put pins right there and you'd short them out, and then it'd be routed. But what we have here is dynamic pins, so that a pin is a constant or a letter, which means a formula, and then it's going to react in that particular point, depending on what the formula specifies. And the formula is a combination of shape generators, which are like LFOs, and where your position is the X, Y, and the Z.
And if you want, also barrels and other things.
Yeah, all sorts of things. Yeah, but that's basically what your finger is doing, what the barrels are doing, what the shape generators are doing, which can be then influenced by your fingers, the shape generators. And that formula specifies the energy going from one point to the other. It's what makes this synthesizer rather unique, because it really is tied down to that surface on this fundamental layer. And we also specified that the shape generators could be used in each formula, and they can also be any one of the possible shapes.
Each formula can use a different shape for the same shape generator.
Yeah, so it makes for a lot of different possibilities. And I don't know if people, we had a discussion about sequencer control, and yesterday Roger was talking about, and I've seen him demo this, it was a really nice drum pattern that he plays and modulates the, in real time, his hi-hat interaction. Also snare drum, like you were doing something with the snare.
Each pad is a different thing.
Yeah, so using the little instrument to modulate those things. And so in that way, you could sort of think of these shape generators too as these very simple little sequencers that are just the idea that you have a loopable thing and you're interacting with it, you're modifying it.
So yeah, so in each shape generator there's a frequency which is real-time controlled. So if you want to move through something faster or slower, that can depend on your current finger pressure and all sorts of other things. So that's the comment we had the other day about, you know, changing attack rates and changing that sort of thing.
I'm just gonna play some sounds now. I'll just go through and just play some of the ones that I.
Yeah, it sounded like that.
Didn't sound like that on the big one.
this is an actual J-Mar toy piano. I didn't get into any of the things that we have these spectral sets. Originally started as recordings, heavily processed. We do a type of granular synthesis with them, but this is pretty well. That's a beautiful module. We have this bank of squares or triangular sawtooths that are granularly.
I like the way that you had the mouse sustain pedal.
Yeah, it's fun. I don't have the adapter.
Yeah.
Oh, there's an interesting one. Yeah, so this is the one I'll end with because Gert is coming up. So this one is the idea that there's nothing really radical. There's control voltage recorders. You can get them in Eurorack. The idea here is what you're going to do is you're going to capture a delay line and not use it as audio, but you're actually going to use it as performance, like to modify another sound. So I can do things like a time stretch. Modulation audio. There you go. That's it. Any questions? I'm also available, or just come up to me and talk to me. I'm more than happy to answer
I
anything.
just cut the barrels. It's not. It's cut. It is graphical.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.